Good afternoon, everybody. It's fantastic to see you all. I'm Nick Westall, and I'm the district's corporate growth lead for SEMA Menon this year. SEMA's off to Anaheim for this year's annual Toastmasters conference, so she can't be here today. So fortunately, you get me instead. So welcome all. It's absolutely fantastic to see you, and that whether you're hiding from the sun or trying to get through this so that you can go back out again, it is great to have you here in the room. I would like to introduce our host for today. The club, and that's for this webinar. The Club Coach webinar session is designed to empower you with the tools and the knowledge to revitalize clubs and help them achieve the excellence that they all aspire to. Your host for today has been district contest finalist 10 times in the last 8 years. This year, he competed in 3 of the year's district contest finals, and he won the district evaluation contest in 2016. He's a distinguished Toastmaster from City of London Toastmasters, the D91 Club Coach Lead for 2024 to 2025, and in his spare time, when he's got any, he's a counsellor for Childline. So please put your hands together and welcome Garlock John.
Thank you everyone for joining today. I'm delighted to host this session, and thank you very much, Nick, for your warm welcome. Kind of almost mentioning the number of times I've been in district finals suggests that I've been a runner-up or less quite a few times over the years, but I still take the real pleasure in competing, but also the real pleasure in meeting all of our Toastmasters across the district and beyond. You know, I've seen so many inspiring stories over the years of people's accomplishments in terms of how people have grown, and certainly in terms of being a club coach, it is definitely about growth. I'm going to be sharing some slides. It just won't be slide heavy. It's just to help facilitate the first sort of 5 minutes or so before we go into discussion, and just kind of really cover what this session is about and how we're going to be doing things today. So can everybody see the slides? Some people give me a thumbs up. Thank you very much. Okay, so this session is going to cover everything about club coaching, from what it's about, the people who want to be club coaches, those who are in a club that wants a club coach, and also existing coaches that really want to share their hints and best tips and ideas. The reason why that we're making this a recorded webinar is that we think this is going to be useful for all future club coaches. So I'm really keen for everyone to ask any question that you've got in mind, probably not more about contests, but very more about the club coaching. I can always talk about the contest in the future. During the session, I'm going to be sharing this QR code, which is actually a registration form for people who are interested in becoming a club coach, or your club wants a club coach. You can scan the QR code, or there's also a form that Barbara has posted in the chat. We will share this a few times, but if you come out this session thinking, yes, I really want to do more, I really want to get involved about this, this is a place you can kind of start in order to kind of show us that you are interested and keen. I'm going to give an overview. I'll have a 30-minute panel session. There'll be 15 minutes dedicated Q&A, and then I'll wrap up in the last 5 minutes. I will definitely stop within the hour, so definitely before 6 o'clock UK time. I'm very strict about keeping the time on things. Thank you very much to our speakers that have volunteered today. Nick, who you heard, who just opened the session, myself chairing. We've got 3 fantastic club coaches that have been incredibly successful over the years: Craig, Mike, and Rose, and you're going to hear far more from them later on today. And also our brilliant Barbara, who is keeping everything running in the background in terms of the tech and making sure that you can all see and hear and get involved in today's session. So what is a club coach? Okay, it's an experienced member that helps struggling clubs improve. To do that, they need to build rapport with the club committee. They need to inject that energy, enthusiasm, and structure, because some clubs might be struggling with that. They tend to go into the club environment, do the moments of truth, help give their feedback to the club on ways in which they can help improve and what their experience is like based on this experienced member's experience. This experienced member will also draw on other people as well to kind of help support the club. They really help the club to develop the club success plan. And ultimately, the goal is to turn a struggling club into a distinguished club. So if you remember those DCP points on the club success plan. There has been confusion in the past between what's a club mentor and what's a club coach. Sometimes they've been used interchangeably to mean the same thing. That's not the case. So just to clarify, if you are someone who is supporting a newly chartered club, so one that's about to be chartered or just chartered, you are a club mentor. If you're supporting a struggling existing club, then that makes you a club coach. So just so that there's clarity on that definition. If you are going for your Distinguished Toastmaster Award, either becoming a club mentor or a club coach will allow you to have the credit to work towards that. There's loads of reasons why you should be a club coach. For leadership, meeting new people, it's a real personal growth opportunity. You're really building on your skills, and really, it's fantastic to make an impact to the club that's there to serve the community. In terms of how to become a club coach, so you need to have completed at least the level 2 pathways, or if you're still on the, you've not got that far, but you've completed the old education program, the kind of bronze level on the communicator or leadership part. You can only coach one club at a time, so you can't coach multiple clubs. And the club that you do coach, you can't be a member of, okay? And you can't be a member of it within the last 6 months. So it has to be someone external coaching the club. The commitment can last between 6 months to up to 2 years. Tends to be that someone, if they join as a club coach now, would support the club until June 2025, when it's the end of the Toastmasters year. And then, if they become a distinguished club, effectively they've earned the credit and helped supported that striving club. Some clubs, though, do need a bit more time to get that help. There's a certain number of deliverables or milestones, but these are really update reports that I'll explain later. It just means, are you checking the club on a regular basis? And the thing in Toastmasters, it's really important. It's all about getting feedback, both yourself receiving feedback and you giving feedback to the committee members. In terms of the club that is eligible for coaching, they need to have between 3 and 12 members and cannot be suspended. They can have a maximum of 2 club coaches. Normally it's just 1 club coach. The club needs to vote for a club coach to be appointed, and then they work with that club coach to kind of do the reports and the deliverables. The other thing I should mention is that both the club coach and the club, at least one of the club committee members needs to complete something called the Club Coach Program module. This is on Basecamp. It's about 1 hour. It's online learning, and it just goes through with you all the basics about how to become a successful club coach and what you need to do. That is a mandatory requirement to complete that module before you are assigned as a club coach. But it takes an hour. It's very straightforward, and it's incredibly useful to kind of ground you into the basics. We then work with Toastmasters HQ to kind of confirm the appointment of the club coach and the club. And again, there's also going to be feedback as well. This is the same QR code. If you want to sign up to be a club coach or looking for a club coach, this is the form that you can go on. So on to our panel discussion. I'm just going to stop sharing now. I hope that little intro there gave you enough of an understanding of what a club coach is and what is involved. I'm going to introduce each panelist in turn and also ask them an opening question so that you kind of get to know them. So the first person I'm going to welcome up is Craig. Craig Moss has been a member of Toastmasters for over 13 years. He's currently the club president of Berkhamsted Speakers in Hertfordshire and VPPR of Balboa Park in San Diego. His involvement with club mentoring and coaching spans across the globe, as he currently coaches a corporate club in California, Beckton Dynamic Blabbers. That's quite it's quite an interesting club name there. And it was also previously a coach for Bays in London, as well as a mentor for LHH, part of the ADICO, and also in central London. Craig brings a huge amount of experience. And so the first thing that I want to ask Craig is, why did you want to become a club coach?
Well, one of the reasons why people, thank you, Gellert. One of the reasons why people want to become a club coach, I think, is for one of perhaps the wrong reason. Yes, it's the benefit of getting involved with clubs. is to take a checkbox to get that closer to your DTM, which a lot of members here would love to have that. It's like the ultimate goal. For me, it wasn't about that. I did not get involved with the club growth team because I thought, oh, good, that's another one. Yes, it's a wonderful thing to attain. I think a good club coach or mentor will be someone who just really wants to help others, not just the experience, but also want to see the fruits of their labor, a bit like having a farm and putting water or feeding it. You kind of want to see it flourish. And like all the 3 clubs I've coached and mentored, I'm still involved. Not because I have to. I don't. I've got the little tick. I've got the little certificate. I've got the T-shirt, so to speak. I don't need to stay there, but because I still care, I want to be around. So the reason for me is about helping others, purely and simply that, and I love it.
Right. What a fantastic answer, Craig, and what a great way to open up in terms of your view as a club coach. I want to introduce now our second panelist, Mike. So Mike first helped a club when he was an area director in A62 some years ago. By getting a club coach and 2 others who did not want to be formally described as club coaches to support that club that failed to renew any members at the end of September last year, just 3 members did renew in October, which was the bare minimum to enable the club to survive and then thrive. Later, Mike joined another coach, and together they turned that club around and dropped to 10 members, resulting it to become President Distinguished with 40 or so members. He went on to coach another club in another division when working with their club officers, and also got their numbers up to 20 members and also to become a distinguished club. So again, a very experienced club coach here to share his experience today. So Mike, same question that I asked Craig, what was it that made you want to be a club coach?
Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening. It was really down to the fact that I was an area director. And at that time, in 2018, 2018, the situation was that the club that needed a coach was Armada in Plymouth, and I live in Trowbridge in Wiltshire. And to go to a club meeting and come back afterwards meant leaving home at about 3:30 in the afternoon, driving by car a long way, go to the meeting, come back after second round and get home at about 1 a.m. in the morning. And so this was not sensible for me to try and be a club coach. But they got somebody who was interested in joining the club, but also was interested in becoming a club coach. And her name Claire Crowther, she was moving between Hull and Plymouth, Plymouth. Plymouth. And that was just unbelievable. Anyway, he became a club coach, but 2 other people from Southwest Speakers in Exeter also volunteered to help. They didn't want to be called club coaches, but they were helping the club in that sort of role. When I visited the club in September 2018, the vibes were awful. There was a deadbeat committee in place. They'd been playing swaps. The numbers had gone down. They were getting people to come through the door, but they weren't becoming members. And I don't blame them either, because the vibes were terrible. And I was over the moon when no officers actually renewed their membership. In fact, no members renewed their membership at the end of that September. Early in October, 2 people did, and then shortly afterwards, they cajoled 1 other past member to become a member who'd been a member in the previous year. And the result was they had the minimum to get them going again, 3 members. And from then on, it was a steady climb. They didn't achieve the goals by the following June, but the year after they did. And what they achieved was, they did actually get, 2020, they got 10 distinguished club points, and their net growth in that year was 12 to 18, so net 5 plus. and they'd gone from 2 to 12 by June of 2019. That procedure got me interested. And then I went on as a club coach, joining Sharon Wayland, who was one of the two people that helped Armada. I went on with Sharon Wayland shortly after she'd been in place and coached Bristol Central, which was close to, relatively speaking, to where I live in Trowbridge. And together, we were successful in turning that club around as well. And then later on, I'd done a division director's role, and I was in a position, there was somebody needed to help out a club in South Wales, Valleys and Vales. And I enjoyed the procedure and like to help others, just as Craig said. And so I became a club coach for the second time. And I'm pleased to say that we managed to turn that club around as well. And I joined them around about August 2020. And by June the 30th, 2021, they'd gone from 11 members to 18, and they were select distinguished. So the process of helping clubs is what I've been turned on by, you might say.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. What I really heard was about the procedure, in a sense, that the almost formula that you can kind of help use to support the clubs, but also just how much of a team effort it was to kind of get everyone involved. So fantastic stuff. I'm now going to introduce our final panelist, who's going to be joining today, Rose. I believe Rose might be having some... Oh, yeah, here we go. We can see you, Rose. Amazing. So let me just introduce... Rose has been a Toastmaster since 2017. She's the immediate past president of London Toastmasters, helping to rebuild its numbers from 10 to a healthy 45 by June this year. She is the membership officer this year and continues to build on last year's success in growing club membership. Rose was a successful club coach in Ferndale Speakers in 2021 and has been a club coach to Legacy Speakers Brixton, which also finished the Toastmaster year as distinguished. Rose has a keen interest in supporting clubs rebuild and may go on to do a third club coach role this year. I mean, we've got what a panel, right? These are people who just keep on coming back for more. So Rose, tell us, why do you keep on coming back for more?
Why do I keep on coming back for more? So maybe if I just share how I came to get involved in club coaching, because just like the other Toastmasters on the panel, I was involved in district leadership. So I was an area director, and my home club was a very successful club, London Public Speakers. It was always growing numbers, 50s, 60s, created 2 new clubs out of it simply because of its numbers and success. So for me, I was used to the environment of a successful club. And whenever I visited a club that was struggling, I thought, oh dear, something could be done about this. So I got involved in being a club coach because I was pursuing my DTM award. And I knew that one of the requirements for that is to be a club coach. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what a club coach was until I started pursuing my DTM. I thought, club coach, what do you do? What goes on there? And really, I think there's an opportunity here for the district to sell the role of a club coach to Toastmasters that are pursuing their DTM awards. There is nothing to be ashamed of, because as human beings, we provide a service, we get something out of it, and that is absolutely fine. So for me, getting involved with my first club, which was Down Speakers, I was in pursuit of my Distinguished Toastmaster Award. And at the time, because I live in London and the club is in the south of England. And so it was a bit of, fortunately for me, we were in lockdown and all meetings were online. So I was able to join all their meetings because meetings were online. And for me, it was actually growth and also kind of going out of my comfort zone, because there I was used to London clubs, and the idea of coaching a club way outside of London, I don't think it would have come to me easily, but because this was online time and we were jumping around visiting clubs across the pond and across the world, I thought, why not? Let me just give it a try and work with this club. And so I met them, joined one or two of their meetings, and I saw an opportunity there for me to share some ideas, because a characteristic of many struggling clubs is that because they've got very few numbers, the engagement with the education program also tends to go down. And so you typically find that these clubs will have maybe one prepared speech at each meeting, sometimes no prepared speech at all. So guests do come, they visit, they see, perhaps they go and visit another club, and when they compare, they might think, this is not a very good club. Maybe there is not much happening here. So for me, the first observation was not many prepared speeches being given. And of course, we've got very experienced Toastmasters who could be giving speeches and all that. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to stay and I'm going to be a club coach. And I was a club coach with another Toastmaster. So we worked together, which was quite good because we could bounce ideas off each other. And yeah, successfully supported this club onto distinguished status. But I must say that the reason the club then went on to become distinguished is because the officers actually took charge and saw that they could do things differently. So, for example, we pointed out, myself and my other co-coach pointed out that we were halfway through the year, but they hadn't yet submitted a single education award. And yet they had done the work. So some of them had done speeches, but there was no record of those speeches, at least not on Club Central. So one of the things that we encouraged them to do was to look at the speeches that they had done, complete them on Basecamp, and get them, for those that had finished levels, to get those levels submitted. So the reason I mentioned this is because even though you might have a coach coming into a club, the work has to be done by the officers and the members. If the officers are not up to it, then the coach can't do much with that club. And then I went on to coach another club, which is closer to me, which is Legacy Speakers Brixton. And I joined them in November last year. They had their membership drop drastically. I think they had started the year, they started the year with 23 members. And after the September renewals, they had dropped down to something like 12 members. And really that was a big problem, because with 12 members, you're going to be tripling up on meeting roles and so on. So again, as someone a Toastmaster who has been area director, division director, but also coming from successful clubs and being president and growing my club, I could share a number of ideas with the club and motivate them to get interested in picking up their club. Mm-hmm. And I was delighted that they did. They got the interest and said, yeah, let's do this. And, got the club to distinguish. So rebuilt back from 12 members to 20. And that's not an easy feat at all. Mm-hmm. So really proud of, proud and really loving being a club coach. Back to you.
Great. Thank you. Right. Some remarkable stories, great intros, great background, great experience. What I'm going to do is we're going to focus more on the kind of the things that worked well and maybe didn't quite work so well in your experience. I'm also going to ask for those of you who want to ask questions, please post them in the chat, and I'll kind of bring them up at the appropriate moment. So if you've got questions in the audience, post them in the chat and I will bring them up. But what I want to do is, and if I ask each panelist to kind of keep their answer to 1 to 2 minutes so that we kind of rotate through as you build on your ideas. Membership has come up quite a lot. So Craig, what works well in terms of building membership in the clubs that you coached?
Well, actually, there is quite a theme, and I'll keep your minute to 2 minute in mind so that we do finish on time and we're succinct, very important. There are a lot of ways that we can obviously look at membership and growth. And I think you have to start with the base. In fact, both my esteemed panelists also mentioned that if the scene isn't set correctly, if there's something out of kilter, the guests are going to sense it. They're not idiots. They may not be Toastmaster members, may not be experienced, but they're going to know if the meeting is welcoming, they're acknowledged, they feel comfortable, and they leave the meeting feeling on a high. That's what we all want to do, isn't it? Life is short. To answer your question, other than word of mouth, which obviously works probably the best, and I wear a VPPR hat in various other places, we strategize with open houses. We did a few of those. And we adopted the structure that a lot of clubs are meant to have, which is 1 or 2 speakers maximum, your best speaker, your best evaluator, some really energetic table topics, a really fun and vibrant meeting. And most importantly, conscious of the time, most importantly, we followed up. And it takes time. Of course it does. It's not a quick fix. Why do you think we have at least a year allocation for that? It takes possibly a little bit longer, so you have to be patient. But open houses, vibrancy, don't be the best kept secret. Let's get the name out there. So I think it's open houses for me, and then following up to make sure they feel loved.
Great, thanks, Craig. Mike, what about your thoughts in terms of building on that for growing membership?
Depends on what methods you use. In the locality where I am, we've tended to find that Meetup has done pretty well for us. It's worked very well for clubs in Bristol, North Avon and Bristol Central, and it's worked also for Bath, although it's just about doubling its cost at the moment, and that could become a problem. However, what I found is that the most important thing is having an enthusiastic and committed committee. The club officers are the people that you want to do the work, not you as an individual, as a coach. And we didn't seem to have problems with growing the numbers. In fact, with Bristol Central, the numbers grew so rapidly, it soon changed around. And the problem was, how on earth do you satisfy the speaking demands of nearly 40 members if you're not going to become a weekly club? And so that was the sort of issues that we found. I've never been particularly good at PR work, so it's not a case of me doing PR, it's a case of getting somebody else who can to do that. But that's really the way that we managed to get those clubs to grow, was predominantly through Meetup. And there were the occasional people that were brought along because of word of mouth from one member to a friend, and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Rose, I know you've already talked quite a lot about growing membership, but how have you promoted the club to the community? Because you mentioned you've got quite a few clubs based in different communities.
Yes. So I've found down what the officers did was to run a couple of open house events. And you might ask yourself, so why would they not have done that before? And even as we speak now, there will be clubs that are struggling for members, but they have not planned to run any open house events. Whereas this is something that clubs should be planning at the start of the year to say, you know what, let's run maybe 2 or 3. Because then what you tend to find with struggling clubs is that they want to run their open house around about May or June, make matters worse, which is really late, because by the time you're going to get guests, and then you need some time for those guests to get accustomed to the club. So definitely open house works, because I've seen it also work at legacy speakers when they ran an open house event. Lots of guests came, and of course with the follow-up we had some conversions. Also, as Mike said, Meetup really works. At my current club, we joined Meetup last year, around about July. Today we have got 1,000 members. But let me tell you this, today we have something like 35 people signed up to each meeting. We have to close that off to 35 because that's too many for our venue. So I just want to this message to go out there to any club that is struggling and is maybe based in an area that's got a lot, that's good sized population. Try Meetup or other online platforms that can bring you those people that perhaps never heard about, your meeting. So definitely Meetup. Also open house, but plan that well ahead. Kind of like 3 events in a year, not 1 in June. And then lastly, bring a friend, because when a friend comes to the friend's event, they're more likely to join up. Thank you. Back to you.
Yeah, okay, great. I just want to focus on membership a little bit more, and maybe this is more open, for Craig, Mike, and Rose. Anything else that you would suggest that clubs can try out that we've not talked about yet?
About growing membership?
Yeah.
If I may just add something, a point to what we already discussed about bringing in guests. So it's all very well bringing in guests from current members, from Meetup, from open houses, but really the membership sign up is going to be in how good your follow up is. So you're bringing in the guests. Are the guests registering? Are you taking their contacts, their names and contacts? And then is someone going to follow up? And how quickly is that person following up? Is that person following up maybe a week later? I see this happen in some clubs that, guests are not followed up in a timely manner. So follow up, but also do not follow up just once. Sometimes people need reminding, if you follow up straight after the meeting, do check in again with guests, maybe a couple of weeks later to say, hey, we have another meeting. Would you like to come? And by the way, if you're ready to join, here is the application form.
Yeah. Sounds good. Craig, I know that you also mentioned follow-ups as being important in your discussion. Anything else you'd add to Rose's points, or do you feel that's kind of really nailed it?
There is the theory that you don't have to follow up with anybody, but I think you need to capture their details. Some clubs have a QR code that the member or guest is encouraged to take a picture of, and then they can fill in a form. That's probably the easiest way to capture. They all go into one place. So gathering the information is important. But I think Rose, Mike are right. I think if you just wait for them to come back again, yes, they should be impressed with what they've seen, you'd hope. But it doesn't always work that way. And sometimes you have to cajole, like a child, nurture them to become members. I don't force membership down guests' throats. They either want to join or they don't. And I think while you should sell the idea, and we encourage guests to come back, don't we, once, maybe 2 or 3 times, we certainly don't want those guests hanging around for months, because I think that's wrong as well. For obvious reasons. So for me, yes, following up is really important, and having, I think was also mentioned, a very well structured committee, because if the committee is strong enough, that, and even if it's not start with, once they get their act together, I think that really helps bring the club together. So yeah, I do PR. I can talk about PR all day long, but I think we're talking about coaching today, and I have lots of ideas for marketing the club as well.
Great stuff. And I just wanted to cover with Mike, because Mike, you raised an interesting point about the vibe of the club being important. When guests come in, they want that positive, energetic vibe. What would you say is a good vibe at a club that you wanted to create?
The first thing is that when they come through the door, they need to be made to feel welcome. So you either need to have a sort of rota of members who are going to do that role, or you just need members who, they see a strange person come through the door and they go and approach them and say, hi, come on in, how did you hear about us, and things like that. You've got to start off that way to make them feel welcome. The other thing that we tend to do in the clubs I'm a member of here in the UK, we have a warm-up session early in the meeting where about 15 to 20 seconds, each person is asked to speak, answering a particular question that the Toastmaster gives them. And what that does is it makes all those new faces say something at the meeting, because you're working your way around. You start with an experienced Toastmaster or two, and you work your way through the room, zigzagging through the room, and they've actually spoken in public. And they may have been scared to do that. You've not hinted at that being the case at that time, but it's got them to speak. And then we ask them if they'd be interested in doing a table topic during the halfway session, because our table topics are at the second half. And it gets them involved. And then at the end of the meeting, ask them how they felt about the meeting. So you've actually encouraged them potentially twice or 3 times to speak to people at their first meeting. Very often we get good feedback because of that. And, you know, if there's been some fun in table topics, or some of the, you know, things that people said in their speeches have been amusing, it's helped. So that I think is the key thing.
Thank you very much. I think that's enough probably focus on membership at the moment, which I know is one of the most popular questions that people want to ask about. It's now a good time to go through. We've got quite a few questions now coming up on the chat, and to kind of get the panel's thoughts on it. So the first one is, what are the primary things a club coach needs to do within the first 1 to 2 months after their appointment? So I can answer that quickly, in that you need to complete a what's called a preliminary report, which is your initial assessment of the club. But I'm going to hand over our panel to ask them, how did you write this? How did you do this assessment, and how did you work with the team to do that? So let me start with Rose, and if I can ask you to keep your answers to about 2 minutes or so that we can get a chance to get through all the questions.
Thank you, Garlock. So if I use Legacy Speakers, which is my most recent coaching role. When I arrived, because I had visited them before becoming a coach, and also visited them after being a coach, and so had observed maybe 2 or 3 meetings, so I could see what the club was doing well. I could see where the club could do better, and we then had a committee meeting, which I attended, and at that meeting did hear from them what they would like to see at the end of the year, and how we can get there, because they're the ones that are going to do the work. And so then my role is to advise about some of those ambitions they have and the plans that they have, but the plans really have to come from them.
Yeah, thank you. Craig, what do you do when you first meet up your clubs?
Very similar. I think you can't go into the ball in a china shop. Doesn't work very well at any stage, I think. But you spot the weaknesses within clubs. So similar to Rose, and no doubt Mike does a very similar thing. You observe. We're good Toastmasters. We tend to listen more than we speak, I hope, and therefore observing how the meetings run. You can tell by looking how far ahead the agendas are set up. I think that's a clue there. You also ask how often does the club committee, whatever that looks like, meet. If they're not communicating regularly, surely they're not organised enough. I'm also think honesty is the best policy. Not like with any evaluation. A lot of us know how to run a good evaluation. I think we've got to be honest. We have. I think if we're pussyfooting around and not saying what the obvious thing is, the elephant in the room is somewhere. We want to allude to what that possibly is. And then the other, before I complete my finish what I think on initially on this, is that does the club have a club success plan? And if they are, when was the last time they looked at it?
Great point. Mike, anything you'd like to add to that?
I certainly agree with the softly approach initially, because although you may have ideas about what's going on with this club, you don't know what's going on. So you need to find out, you need to pick up the vibe from the meetings, the regular club meetings, but most importantly, you've got to try and find out about the club committee and whether they're holding meetings. And for instance, Bristol Central, they had 3 officers who were active, committed, and no more. Not that they didn't have the officers, The officers were not attending either club meetings or committee meetings. And eventually, it took me a long while to get around to doing it because they were pussyfooting around the problem. I eventually said, what you've got to do is get rid of those people and find replacements. Now, the committee meetings were actually being attended by 6 people. 3 of them were not on the committee, but they were so committed to the club that they were coming to committee meetings. So my suggestion was get rid of the old deadwood, bring those 3 people in partway through the year, and let's see how it goes. And my God, did things turn around rapidly after that happened. The other thing was that all those 3 people that I've classified as deadwood, one of the club officers took it on his shoulders to talk to them individually and say that's what we wanted to do. And all 3 of them were relieved that it had been said because they knew they weren't doing their job, they weren't committed, and they were glad to get out of it. And it's sad, but it's a reality. I did have a bit of an argument with one of the people, and that's because she said, well, that's unfair to sort of get rid of those people. I said, well, look at it this way. If you are in a job in a company and you're not doing the job properly, you're not attending your team meetings, you're not supplying your reports on time that you're supposed to do, what will happen to you? Well, I'll probably be fired. I said, exactly. That's just what you need to do. And it was a way of getting the message across that made them realise. And that particular person went on to be the very successful club president the next year. So I was very impressed by her.
Good ending at the end.
Yeah.
I want to focus more now on sustainability. You know, we don't want a club to get a club coach, and there's been a great question raised around here. You know, they keep going for a few years and they end up back in the same situation, needing another club coach. And they just end up being in this sort of cycle of needing club coaches to help them every couple of years. So I guess, what strategy do you think you recommend to help make them long sustaining in the sense that they don't need a club coach again? And I'll go back to Rose on this and sharing your thoughts. I think, Rose, we might need to keep this just at under 2 minutes just because of time.
Okay. So, sorry, I'm sitting by a church. You can hear the bells.
All right.
I think if the club coach finishes their term, excuse me, and the relationships with the relationship with the committee and members is good, and the club are happy to have that coach stay around, then I don't see why the coach can't really stay around to continue to support. Because as Craig said, you know, just because a club is distinguished doesn't mean they're there yet. You know, they've got everything, you know, worked up. So I'd say, for example, I would love to continue to support a club that I've been a coach for, if they'll have me, because I think, you know, together we can, you know, help embed those processes that have been introduced. And also, very quickly, it's also about processes, because sometimes things are done maybe as a one-off, but as coaches, we want to see that the new practices really become the way that the club does things, rather than just a one-off to get a new member or to get, you know, a speech done and so on. So let's get those new ways of working really embedded into the club culture, and that way they will continue to do well. So back to you.
Okay, thank you. Craig, how have you made your club sustainable? I know you're staying with them quite a lot already, but what else have you done?
Interestingly enough, what wasn't mentioned or wasn't overly clear, there's club coaches, we know that, and there's club mentors. The mentors have a slightly different apparatus, or is it MO, whatever you want to call it, modus operandi, that they don't have to be in the club for a year or two. In fact, they can get that little check mark I mentioned earlier by being a member for 6 months, or involved with that club for 6 months as a mentor when they've chartered. However, there's a club that I was a mentor for. I'm not the mentor at the moment, called LHH, which is part of Adecco in London. And I've been involved on and off with them over the last 20 months. Not because it's my role as mentor to help them, but because I want to make sure, as you mentioned a lot, that there is some sort of sustainability. Not that it's my problem, but just to make sure that they're doing all the right things. I pop in every 2-3 months for a meeting, whether it's online, and therefore, and I talk to the club president. I even pop into the committee meetings from time to time, maybe spotting those little things that might be going slightly awry that they have taken for granted. They think, oh, they're fine as a club. I'm not quite convinced. There's no such thing as a perfect club. We all know that. And it's good to have that guidance from time to time, an affirmation. So with LHH, for example, I was there last week, funnily enough, with a guy called Eddie Quah. Most of you will know Eddie Quah, who was the financial director for District 91 for a couple of years at least. And he and I were the mentor, and we were there to support them. And they had the most incredible meeting. We had 3 speakers. It had all the hallmarks of a perfect meeting. And I think just by going along and touching base, making sure they're on the same road, they will continue to be successful.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. Mike, making them sustainable, what would you recommend?
Oh, with Armada, I kept track of them at arm's length because, I'd explained the distance issue. And I was getting the vibes. I knew the club coach very well, and she'd become a member after after becoming a club coach. She became a member of the club and eventually stopped traveling between the north of England and the south. And she's a friend now, and she's my inside line to know whether or not it's working. And so far, so good. And the results I've seen on the DCP give you that answer. Bristol Central, it was a difficult situation being a club coach because they meet exactly the same days in the month that my Bath Spa Toastmasters club, where I'm a member, I'm currently the president, meet. So I had to split my time between my home club or a home club and them. Obviously, committee meetings was different. So what I did was I committed to them for at least a year after I'd ceased to be the club coach. I said that I would visit them once a quarter, and that's what I did. I made friends with various people who were on the committee. One of them I've taken over from. He was the last year's division director for Division A, Andy Rahi. And so I've maintained some sort of contact with people. I'm not attending their meetings, but I've maintained contact. Valleys and Vales in Wales, well, when I was coach for them, it was an online club. But at the time that they got to the point that they were successful, they decided to go back to face-to-face meetings, and they moved to Swansea. And once again, well too far for me to drive to meetings on a regular basis. So to a certain extent, I've lost contact with them. But I do keep an eye on how they're doing in the DCP, and the indications are that they're doing okay. So it's variable. I agree with the others. It's nice to keep in touch with people, but sometimes there are barriers in the way, and you have to be wary of that.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to tackle a question which is around what if we don't need a club coach? And what if we've got, vibrance and energy, even though we might be at a club that's got 10 or so members, and also it creates more speech slots for those members. I do need to clarify that the club coach is optional for clubs. You won't get a club coach forced on you. It's only for clubs who are seeking that support. However, we always recommend that it's good to get some fresh ideas in. Maybe if you don't want an official club coach, what we can do is maybe just an experienced member to visit, give some suggestions, and have a discussion of a committee. I think that would still be really valuable for any club to kind of get some fresh ideas. So hopefully that answers your question. It is not mandatory if you've got less than 12 members to have a club coach. It's optional.
That was me. Thank you. I was having a stand up.
Yeah, I would just add, by the way, that sometimes it's about personality fit. You might get someone who you think, oh my God, they're going to railroad our whole club. That's not the purpose of a coach. It is meant to be to support, to listen, to answer questions, and also give suggestions of what may or may not work. What's good for the goose may not be good for the gander, whatever the expression is. So one man's poison and treasure. So what I'm saying is that the coach who's coming along to support or potentially support that club may not be a fit, like a girlfriend and a boyfriend. Maybe, oh God, I don't think we're matchmakers here at Toastmasters, but I've seen that at Toastmasters before. But I do think that maybe it's not about whether the club wants a coach. Maybe it's about whether the club wants a specific type of coach who can help them. They're not here to destroy, they're here to support and help and work with you, iron out those problems, like a doctor would. I'm not going to give you a cast if all you've got is a cough.
I just wanted to say it was me. I think I really enjoyed club meetings. I felt if somebody came in and told me everything I was doing wrong, I just find it really demoralising. I'm quite capable of telling myself what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, good point.
There's a really interesting point, and thank you for that question, Dave. That was that was very good. We're in the last few minutes, just very quickly covering on Speechcraft. So in our Club Growth team, we do actually have a Speechcraft lead. So if any of you want more detailed information about Speechcraft, certainly that's something that we can appoint someone to kind of speak to your club about. And maybe from the panel, just 30 seconds each on what do you think about Speechcraft in terms of supporting the club. So I'll start with Rosie. And 30 seconds, Speechcraft, what do you think of it?
Speechcraft is this is something I've done twice. It's labor intensive. I wouldn't recommend it as the first option for a struggling club because it needs lots of people and you're not guaranteed people signing up. So I'd say go for open house and leave Speechcraft maybe for those clubs that have got lots of resources and time to build membership. Back to you.
Great. 30 seconds. Speechcraft, what do you think of it?
Myself, I would say I've never until now thought about Speechcraft as a way to fix a struggling or fledgling club, but I think it's a great idea. I do agree an open house is probably a good place to start to bring those, bit like Field of Dreams, how they're going to know that it's there unless you invite people in. But Speechcraft is a fantastic option, alternative for those who want the DTM attainment. But yeah, I think be open to all ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, very quickly, Speechcraft, your thoughts?
I'm very hesitant to say that it's a good way to get new members. I'm not saying it can't, but I don't perceive that it does particularly. I was the Zoom host on a Speechcraft for Armada some time ago, and great people came along, learnt about how to speak, and only one showed any interest but never became a member in terms of adding to the club. So I'm doubtful, and it's all going to be about the personalities who are on leading the Speechcraft and giving speeches or support to those people as to whether they get on with them and then want to join or not. And it's like Craig said, sometimes your face doesn't fit. And if that's the case, nothing's going to change that. So, yeah, I'm skeptical. Open house, I think, much more important.
Okay, thank you. Before I wrap up the session, I'm going to ask for some final words from the panelists on, what's the number one tip that you would give clubs to become distinguished and successful? I'll go the other way around this time. So, Mike, last words, what's your best tip?
Train people how to use pathways properly. In the manufacturing industry, there's a saying called on time in full. It's about satisfying customer orders. If you can deliver what the customer wants, when they want it, at the price, correct, no shortages, it works. If you deliver speeches, complete your pathways information and levels, you'll do really well in the Distinguished Club program. Even if you don't do all the admin things, you'll still become distinguished.
Yep, great tip.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Craig, your tip.
I would also emulate what Mike is saying. I was going to answer in a slightly different way, a curveball here. One thing we didn't talk about, mistakes. I made a terrible mistake with one of the first clubs. I got 10 seconds. It's very simply this. If you decide to coach, don't get too embroiled. Sit from afar, give advice from afar. Don't do what I did initially with my other club, which is to actually get involved with the running of the club, only because there were so few members. Learn, no matter what, always watch from afar, guide, don't get too embroiled.
Yep, great tips there, great. And finally, Rose, your top tip.
Can I just check, is the top tip for a club or the top tip is for prospective?
I would say both the
coaches?
coach and the club to succeed together. What would your top tip be?
Or for the club and the coach to succeed?
Yeah.
It really is working together. It's working together. But for me, I'd say if the club officer team do not want to be successful, then it's not going to happen. So things move when something clicks for them and they say, oh, we can actually do this. Let's go.
Oh, fantastic.
That's it.
I'm going to wrap up, but I just want to give a bit of a round of applause, really, for our panelists today. They shared so much today in terms of the insights. I felt we could have had another hour and got even more information from them in terms of what they say. So really, thank you so much, Rose, Craig, and Mike, for your inputs. It was absolutely fantastic. Right. 60 seconds, because I know I said I'd keep the time. Let me share the pack. Can everyone see that?
Yep, all good.
Yep. So running these webinars, we really want to get your feedback on how it went today. Feel free to post stuff in the chat. There's also a link to a feedback form if you want to, give more details or leave it anonymously. It would be fantastic to hear what you thought about this session and anything else that you maybe want to hear more about. We've got lots and lots of educational webinars coming up today. The next one is submitting pathway levels on the 18th of August. There's the QR codes to take you to the events. If you do go to the district website and the calendar, all of these are on there. So that's probably the quickest way of seeing what's available, but really exciting things on there. Our next Club Growth one on membership renewals, that's come up as a big subject today. Take a look at that. I think that's going to be really brilliant. So that's pretty much it for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I'll be asking Barbara to stop the recording in a moment. Those of you who want to stay on to chat a little bit further, I'm happy to do that. But have a great Sunday evening, and hope to bump all of you in your Toastmasters journey. Thank you.